Hi. At the start of the global lockdown, I got an email from my gym in Manchester which stated that for the time they are shut because of the coronavirus, they will not be counting this time towards my membership fee. This was despite the fact that they were constantly posting videos and online sessions about trainings. The truth was that it was only fair to not charge for this period because the actual training grounds were closed. But today, a much wider concern is about universities, where the campuses are the training grounds which are closed, and no financial compensations are being made to students. Instead, the students are offered online education, which, although seems like a good temporary solution, is not of equal value and definitely does not comprise of the same costs. You see, universities that do offer online programs mostly do so at a significantly lower tuition fee. And that is for the online programs which takes them years and years to design and continuously improve. As a response to the lockdown, students who were studying on campuses have been effectively made distance learning students, whereby the universities are saving on costs such as utility bills on electricity, gas and water because the campus facilities are not being used. And the universities are also saving on other campus overhead expenditures such as temporary zero-hour contract workers and cleaners and so on. For PhD students and staff members, the universities are saving on travel expenditure reimbursements because the conferences are no longer being carried on as well. On the other hand, many students, especially the self-funded international students, are suffering due to loss of financial support from their families who are also facing financial hardships because the decline in income is global. And these are the students who are paying on average at least thrice as much compared to the UK EU students in terms of tuition fees. We can examine this situation from an economic theoretical perspective by combining on one hand the global reduction in income levels with the cost savings of universities on overhead expenditures, using a supply and demand framework. The framework is illustrated by this demand and supply graph, which shows the number of students enrolled on the horizontal axis and the tuition fee charged from them on the vertical axis. The demand is downward sloping, as we already know, and supply is upward sloping, which we see a fall in because of the reduction in overhead expenditures by universities, and we see a fall in the demand curve because of the reduction in income levels globally. When we combine them together, we know that the tuition fee must decline to keep the same rate of enrollment. However, if the tuition fee is not reduced, then we'll see the number of dropouts increasing because it would be the case that a lot of students would no longer be able to afford education at universities. The supply and demand framework makes a major assumption over here. The assumption is that the quality of education moving from on-campus education to online education remains exactly the same. But we know that is not the case. Based on the value for money argument, students are not getting precisely what they have paid for. And this is during an academic year which saw lots of recent strikes. And we saw that students voted for a petition whereby they requested for partial refunds because there have been a significant number of strikes during this year as well. And now, because of the lockdown, students no longer even have access to on-campus education, have voted for refunds in great numbers, and a petition has been filed with the parliament, which is still basically under review. A lot of students are getting moral sympathies from their universities in these circumstances, but many of them need a lot more than that. They need some sort of partial refunds or reductions in tuition fee levels which would enable them to continue their education onwards. However, I'm afraid that many universities might not do that because they certainly don't have to. Legally speaking, many students signed themselves into contracts which require them to pay a certain level of tuition fee to continue their education. However, whilst these students are being required to fulfill their side of obligations, those contracts also implicitly involved on-campus education which is not being provided. But still, students don't have an option to reduce their tuition and pay a lower fee unless the universities agree to it. However, they do have an option to drop out. And sadly, for many of these students, that would be their only option if they're not supported.